There is a new bombshell report on the U.S. government colluding with big tech to censor your speech. Now, this isn't speculation. This is what I would consider a smoking gun report, evidence of the government censoring speech, working with big tech of Americans. Let's get into it. I'm a fan of free speech. I'm a fan of freedom. So one thing our Constitution lets us know is First Amendment, you have free speech. The government shall not infringe on your speech, but they have. We know they've been doing it. Now there's irrefutable evidence they have been doing it. This is a bombshell report according to leaked documents that the Intercept.com has recovered. The headline of the report, I'm going to take the headline and first paragraph from Breitbart, then we'll switch right over to the Intercept and take it from the horse's mouth. The report, Twitter and Facebook had regular meetings with DHS on censoring Americans, Department of Homeland Security. You might remember their birth child, the Disinformation Governance Board. They were around for, I think, slightly longer than CNN Plus. They didn't last long. They thought, let's do the thought police, but make it super obvious. And the lions roared. They backed down with that. So, good friends at the DHS, they're at it again. They've been at it again for a number of years. Executives from Facebook and Twitter, including the recently fired head of trust and safety, Vijay Gadde, which Elon Musk canned right away for good reason, held regular meetings with the Department of Homeland Security to discuss censorship on a wide range of topics, including the withdrawal from Afghanistan, coronavirus, shocker, and racial justice, according to the leaked documents. Let's take a look at the leaked documents. Over here on the Intercept.com, you can go over, take a look at it for yourself, hit some of the highlights to give color and context for what's happened, what are we finding out, and of course, it's all relevant to our free speech and holding the corrupt government officials accountable for infringing on the constitutional rights of Americans. It's not okay. The Department of Homeland Security is quietly broadening its efforts to curb speech it considers dangerous, an investigation by the Intercept has found. Here's the... talk about evidence. Years of internal DHS memos, emails, and documents obtained via leaks and an ongoing lawsuit, as well as public documents, illustrate an expansive effort by the agency to influence tech platforms. Now, it says it wants to curb speech that it considers dangerous. A couple things on that. My common sense says what the DHS considers dangerous is relative to the political agendas of the authorities that control the DHS. Not physical danger, not actual danger. It strongly looks like it's danger relative to their political agendas. But here's the thing. Even if you could say like, no, irrefutably, we have objective evidence they were trying to curb speech, it has nothing to do with political agendas. Let's take a look back at the First Amendment. It's still not okay. The government cannot curb speech, suppress speech, no matter what. I know committing crimes with speech, like, yeah, you can't do that. You're trying to incite violence. You can't do that. So even if we just look past the common sense that they're trying to curb speech that's dangerous to their political positioning and manipulating people to buy into their political agenda, it's still not okay. Let's take a look here. It says, behind closed doors and through pressure on private platforms, the U.S. government has used its power to try to shape online discourse. We see you now. According to meeting minutes and other records appended to a lawsuit filed by Missouri Attorney General Eric Schmidt, he's a Republican, discussions have ranged from the scale and scope of government intervention in online discourse to the mechanics of streamlining takedown requests for false and intentionally misleading information. Here's the thing. Let's just say there's people in power that I believe 100% have our best interest in mind. They're freedom fighters. They're people that I voted for. I don't want them curbing anybody's speech. It's anti-democratic. It's not how you run a democracy. And I wouldn't be so blind as to say like, oh, cool, they're shutting speech down of lunatics that I disagree with, that I think have Marxist, communist agendas, because I'd realize like, one, they have a right to speak their lunatic ideas. They have a right to speak ideas that are anti-American. It is very American to allow anti-American ideas to be spoken. But then I'd also realize if I did support these freedom-loving people who were trying to repress speech, which, by the way, they wouldn't be freedom lovers if they were trying to do that, I'd realize, like, well, it's just a matter of time before they're censoring stuff that I disagree with. Now, Twitter has said, we do not coordinate with other entities when making content moderation decisions, and we independently evaluate content in line with the Twitter rules. That's what a spokesperson, I may have misgendered them. It says spokesperson, spokesbirthing person, potentially non-birthing person, for Twitter wrote in a statement to The Intercept. Now, what we're seeing is irrefutably that Twitter spokesperson was lying, because now The Intercept has the documents. Here's a very interesting part. There is a formalized process for government officials to directly flag content on Facebook or Instagram and request that it be throttled or suppressed through a special Facebook portal that requires a government or law enforcement email to use. At the time of this writing, the content request system at facebook.com, then some gobbledygook URL stuff, is still live. DHS and Meta, the parent company of Facebook, did not respond to a request for comment. The FBI also declined comment. So what they're saying is Facebook has a portal for the DHS, the government officials, to go in and directly request to Facebook which content to suppress. That's a problem. That's the government suppressing speech of Americans. Now, it's arguable if Facebook or Twitter were deciding that for themselves. There's an argument to be made. It's a private company moderating their content. Now, I think it's a very weak argument because these platforms have become monopolies. They're public squares where where public discourse happens. And Section 230 basically says these platforms are declaring themselves platforms, not publishers. If they're publishers, then they need to edit or they can edit their content. But if it's a platform, they're saying like, hey, we're not responsible for any harm. We can't be sued because we're just a platform. We're not a publisher. We don't edit content. We don't approve content. So for them to be protected under Section 230, they need to function as a platform, not a publisher that moderates their content. But they've been moderating their content. So the argument, in my opinion, is very weak for the platforms to be able to censor speech of Americans themselves. Now, the reality is it's the government. We now have the evidence. The government has been telling directly, they can log into Facebook and Twitter and tell them what to censor. That is irrefutably unconstitutional. And it goes on. According to a draft copy of the DHS's Quadrennial Homeland Security Review, what a dumb name, if you ask me, DHS's capstone report outlining the department's strategy and priorities in the coming years, the department plans to target inaccurate information on a wide range of topics, including the origins of the pandemic and the efficacy around the shots, racial justice, U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan, and the nature of U.S. support to Ukraine. Why do you guys feel you need to censor this? First off, it's illegal for you to do it. It's unconstitutional. It's tyrannical of you to do it. Second off, there's nothing to hide. Why do you feel you need to do that? We've already seen that what they consider inaccurate information, a lot of that has proven to be the most accurate information. And what the DHS considers the truth, Hunter Biden's laptop. You can't spread the virus if you get shot up. We've already seen like, oh, y'all are wrong. So like, even if you had the right to censor Americans, which you don't. We've realized you're just inaccurate. You don't have the truth. You have a horrible track record. So if anyone should censor people, it shouldn't be you. It should be purveyors of accurate information. But we don't live in a country or world where anybody should be censoring anybody. Now, the DHS's justification for their goal of curbing misinformation. The DHS justifies these goals, which have been expanded far beyond its original purview on foreign threats to encompass disinformation originating domestically, by claiming that terrorist threats can be exacerbated by misinformation and disinformation spread online. It's like, who are these terrorists that are like, dude, we want to call out Pfizer's product because that's just what we need to do to put people where we want them. Yeah, we need to call out the atrocities and withdrawing from Afghanistan, because if we do that, it'll really help us. I don't think they're three-dimensional chess players like that. And it goes on to state the obvious. The laudable goal of protecting Americans from danger has been used to conceal political maneuvering. We know that. Let's hear more. The extent to which the DHS initiatives affect Americans' daily social feeds is unclear. During the 2020 elections, the government flagged numerous posts as suspicious, many of which were then taken down. Documents cited in the Missouri Attorney General's lawsuit disclosed. In a 2021 report by the Election Integrity Partnership at Stanford University found that of the nearly 4,800 flagged items, technology platforms took action on 35%, either removing, labeling, or soft blocking speech. So out of the 4,800 posts in this 2020 report that the government flagged for social media to suppress the speech on, those 4,800 that the government flagged, social media platforms took action on 35%. It's a very alarmingly high rate. Even if it was even if it was one single post, that is an absolute atrocity for the American government to be censoring the speech of Americans about. And I find this interesting. The article says, emails between DHS officials, Twitter, and the Center for Internet Security outline the process for such takedown requests during the period leading up to the November 2020. There was an election then. Meeting notes showed that the tech platforms would be called upon to process reports and provide timely responses to include the removal of reported misinformation from the platform where possible. In practice, this often meant state election officials sent examples of potential forms of disinformation to CISA, a bunch of gobbledygook. Now, in light of the Intercepts report coming out, where Twitter and Facebook had regular meetings with the DHS to censor on what to censor with regard to the speech of Americans, and we're seeing here are the processes by which the government can tell the social media companies on what to censor. The question is, now what? There's a couple now whats. I think one is the awareness. This helps more people see what's going on. People who might have had their eyes closed, like, all right, like this irrefutable evidence, I'm going to have to work really hard to pretend this doesn't exist. And for those of us with our eyes already open, there's hard evidence here that we didn't have before. So I think this Intercept revealing, it helps strengthen awareness. But then the second thing I think this does beneficially, it's projected there's going to be a big red wave coming in the midterm elections. And hopefully things are straightforward. All votes are, honest, that kind of thing. So if that happens, the most important thing that I think comes from that is a congressional investigation, a legitimate investigation to both hold social media companies accountable, but also the government officials and agencies that have been committing crimes against Americans. So a red wave means Congress, I believe they've already said they'll investigate this if the GOP takes the House. Now, why the left wouldn't want to investigate this, if we're pretending they're all honest, it's like, all right, there's crimes against Americans happening, so why wouldn't you want to investigate this? kind of like, well, because maybe you're in on it. So I think in an investigation and proper prosecuting, proper holding people accountable would be a very exciting thing to have happen. Will that happen if the GOP, an investigation very likely will happen. But what comes from that is a big question. Now, and to me, that bigger question that's unanswered, I have my speculation, but the unanswered question is, what's the actual motive of DHS and the government, the left government, wanting to censor speech of Americans? My speculation, I don't have hard evidence. I don't know what the investigation would find, but my speculation is people with communist intentions have infiltrated our government, then they've infiltrated big tech to censor Americans as part of their attempt to do a communist takeover. It sounds kind of far-fetched when I say it, but when I look at the reality, it's like, oh, it'd be far-fetched not to think that. So I'm not a lawyer, but I just wonder, basically trying to overthrow the US government from a democracy to a communist government that seems like, I don't know, like a high crime, sort of like a huge domestic terrorist activity. I don't know if I'm just crazy, but I'm just like the motive of these unconstitutional crimes against Americans. That's where I go, will the investigation find that? I don't know. I certainly hope there's tremendous accountability, but one thing that's irrefutable, that they can't hide, they can't block, is this new evidence coming to light of the DHS colluding with Twitter and Facebook. They have the specific logins, they've got the documents, they've outlined the process of how the DHS instructs these companies to censor the speech of Americans. That's irrefutable. So what they can't hide is the awareness that's happening. And I think the more awake we are, the less controlled we are as a society, because to comply, you have to be pretty asleep. So this has been a quick rundown on the new bombshell, leaked documents showing the DHS is colluded with big tech. Let me know what you think of this whole situation in the comments below, and I'll look forward to talking with you next time, my friend. Stay free.